series of 3 committee meetings, and we will also then follow that with a special session with a reading of an ordinance that the city council is considering. So we'll start off with City and Safety Services Committee and discussion of our municipal refuse and recycling is the first item on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam President. As some of you may remember, there was, knowing that this was coming to the contract was coming to an end, at the end of this month, there was kind of trying to figure out, what was taking place when it comes to the Athens Hocking Recycling Center. Athens Hocking Recycling Center was being moved back underneath the Waste District, which would make it and is a political subdivision in which the city of Athens would not necessarily have to put out bid because it is a political subdivision. But with the time and timing of getting that to go through, we did put out a bid. It was decided to put a bid out. There were 2 proposals that came in under the bid process. Normal bid process where the advertisement went out in the local media over 2 different occasions. Wow. 2 bids did come forward. The Deputy Service Safety Director and I imagine the Service Safety Director and others put together the scoring process for looking at these bids and to keep it as objective as should be done. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy Service Safety Director, Ron Lucas, to kind of fill us in on how that process went and the way things kind of came together. But again, this would be to look at renewing, or not renewing, but putting forward and getting a contract in time for having our recycling and refuge collection in the city.
Thank you, Councilman Patterson. You're pretty right on in terms of what the process has been. We went to bid for our refuse and recycling contract, knowing that as of June 30th, our current contract expires, so we needed to be under a contract as of July 1. With that said, we went through the process of accepting proposals and bids from two firms, Rumpke and Athens Hocking Recycling and Refuse. Through that process, there was a series of meetings and questions that were answered via email, and the bids were accepted. What was the date on that?
Due date was 19th, wasn't it?
5/20.
No, it was extended.
I don't know the big time.
My apologies, I don't have that off the top of my head. Anyway, we opened them 2/15, the same day we opened our paving bid, and the 2 bids did come in on time. The bids were broken down into services that the city expects each company to be able to provide, and those categories are residential refuse collection, franchise area refuse collection, residential single stream recycling, franchise area single stream recycling, franchise area street refuse cans, special hauls, and special events. With that said, the bids came in, and the apparent low bid was Athens Hocking Recycling Center, and the scoring chart, which was completed by myself, Deputy Service Safety Director, Paula Horan-Mosley, the Service Safety Director, John Paskey, our Director of Code Enforcement, and George Nowicki, our Solid Waste Litter Control Officer. That was our team. And with that score, we also scored it in favor of Athens Hocking Recycling Center as being able to best supply the needs and services for the city of Athens. We can get into the numbers if you wish. At this point, we can just discuss what we found, where we're at. What we're asking tonight is to go ahead and move forward with creating a contract with Athens Hocking Recycling Center.
That would be authorization for Service Safety Director to enter into contract for recycling. And I looked it up. I think it is June 11th.
I think it was June 11th.
Meetings.
So, Ron, both bids that came in, complete bids, according to the spec sheet that was put out?
Yes.
Well,
I mean, there were sections of one of the bids that was a no bid, but there were no empty sections. The bids were completed.
Can you,
So-
you're,
Go ahead. Go
so
ahead.
you're just saying that they didn't bid on a section of,
Yeah, there were certain sections of the proposal that were no bid. Those were the franchise area specific sections.
And that was both recycling, single stream
Yeah,
recycling,
single
as
stream.
well as refuge.
Refuse and the street trash cans were no bid by Rumpke.
Member Reisner?
Was there any explanation for that, or just simply left blank?
No, they were just chosen not to bid. Yeah.
Madam President?
Yes, and we do have representatives here from both Athens Hocking Recycling and from Rumpke. If we would want to ask for any additional clarification, I think we could.
Yeah. Nick Rupert is here from Rumpke and Bruce Underwood from Athens Hocking Recycling Center.
With the franchise area, why
Can-
wouldn't we
If-
do the work?
Nick.
Sir?
If you would come up and to the podium, and
Thank you.
thank you.
On the, need to sign? You want me to-
If you could sign in.
Um,
And you're Mr. Rupert, right, from
yes, ma'am.
Rumpke? Thank you.
While we believe we could do the work in the franchised area, we elected not to bid on it. It was, we turned in an alternative bid to begin with, and with the bid options that were, I believe, there 7
Yes.
of the options. It was a pick and choose of what work you wanted to be able to do. So again, we believe that with the we can do the work. It's just based on the franchise area, we elected not to bid on that scope of the work. I mean, the other, the single stream curbside recycling, the curbside waste removal, and the special events, we throw our hat in the ring for those with that. And we appreciate the opportunity to be able to bid on it. We would like to, Rumpke would like to service the city of Athens and continue to try to build a relationship with you guys. Any other questions or?
Answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very much.
The document, I don't know if you have the bid tab comparisons in front of you, but it's a 2-part spreadsheet that was sent earlier. If you don't have a copy, I have some paper here if you need to look at something. But you can see the line items in the bid process.
Madam President?
And as I'm understanding, the charts that were completed for Athens Hocking Recycling and Rumpke, where there were, as council members are looking at the charts, some of the numbers are slightly different. And Ron, as I understand what you did in your calculations on the final total cost from each agency, is you kind of correlated and made them an apples to apples price comparison.
Yeah, that was what I tried to do is generate a what's this going to cost per year for each of the services to the residents of the city, and that's how those numbers were figured out. So, for example, residential refuse collection for AHRC to do the correlation. Their bid was $61,625 per month, which comes out to $739,500. Rumpke's bid was $10.38 per month. So with the same direct correlation of 8,500 accounts, that would come out to $1,058,760 annually for residential refuse collection. And we kind of did the same thing, tried to do the same thing all the way across the board. So for franchise area refuse collection, AHRC 69209.98 and Rumpke no bid. Residential single stream, AHRC $1.25 per resident. Rumpke was $4.04 per resident, which came out to $127,500 for AHRC, $452,850 for Rumpke. And Rumpke, we were able to determine a rough processing fee for Rumpke. We weren't really able to do that with AHRC. So the actual cost, if you just did the math of 404, was $412,080 for Rumpke. So still the apparent low there is AHRC. Continuing on to franchise single stream recycling, AHRC $15,852. Rumpke was no bid. Franchise area street refuse cans $15,573. That I refigured your numbers on that. I think that there was a little mathematical error. You bid 75 cents a can. Yeah. So basically 58 cans in the franchise area, 75 cents a can, 7 days a week. Comes out to $15,573. Rumpke no bid. Special hauls is a little different circumstance. That was bid haul and then additional cubic yardage. So AHRC's bid was $25 for the first for the initial pickup, and then $4.10 for each additional cubic yard. Whereas Rumpke was $13.50 and then $26.02 per additional. And then finally, the special events. The way we had to figure out the special events is we determined the cost per dumpster. And what we did was took AHRC's number, $35,250, and divided it by 113 dumpsters, which gave us a cost of $312.50. And we did the same for Rumpke. Using their bid costs, it came out to $485.02 per dumpster, and that includes setting, removing, and tipping fee. And assuming that it's 1 ton of product or refuse in the dumpster. Could be more, could be less. So, the final bid, if we looked at this, AHRC's bid is $1,284,884.98. Rumpke's $1,566,417.26.
I'm sorry, what's the AHRC?
$1,002,884.98.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President.
And just kind of clarifying our process here tonight, what we're doing is having the committee meeting here. Council's work is to authorize the city service safety director to enter into a contract for the municipal recycling. So we have a first reading of an ordinance, knowing that our current contract expires on June 30, and we'll be discussing later, so council members should be thinking about it in order to pass this ordinance. If that works out to pass it this week, that's when it would need to happen, so we would need to be considering 2 other special sessions this week. And I'll bring that up again later as we discuss the first reading of the ordinance.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? Thank you. The other item on our agenda under City and Safety Services is the multi-jurisdictional natural hazard mitigation plan, which needs to be discussed, especially in light of last weekend. with our flash flood down Richland Avenue, Stimson Avenue, and everywhere else in the city of Athens and outlying areas. I'm going to rely on Mayor Paul Weil to fill us in. It's a hefty read. It's a 146-page document for anyone who's having difficulty sleeping at night.
Yes, essentially this is a plan that's been in the works for quite a few years, actually. What's occurred over time is that it's originally we had a Athens natural hazards mitigation plan probably about 6 or 7 years ago. There is a natural hazards mitigation committee that meets almost quarterly, I believe, and it's usually spearheaded by the county commissioner and emergency medical operations. And again, it's a representative of all the different entities in the city that would have to deal with a natural hazard that occurs. In the remaking of our plan, it was decided to pool it with the multi-jurisdictional aspect of it, adding the other cities involved, other smallest villages, the county, and us involved in it. It's been kind of languishing because of the turnover with the county planner side of it. We need to get it ratified soon. I don't know what the timetable is on it and the deadline on it. Last time I looked at it, it needed a few tweakings, but it was pretty close to done. It looks at the different hazards natural hazards within the county. Primary of us, of course, is flooding, riverine flooding. What we saw this weekend was flash flooding, which is also in the mix. It's a series of assessing the damage that would occur with the flood. It covers mitigation processes, how to limit that, in other words, guidelines of what we need to do. Part of course, is the floodplain ordinances that we have in place, but also assessment of the values of flood events and what it would cost in terms of damage. It looks at education processes, in other words, how to educate somebody to say, do not build in a floodplain, or recommendations, since there's not a lot of control out in the county level. In terms of the county, of course, there are other hazards. If you look at the document itself, it talks about actually forest fires being one of them, just regular flames and fires going up and down the hollows. Some of the places like Albany has no real flood hazard, so to speak. So it's a hodgepodge of putting all the different things together, trying to make it planned. Again, one of the important aspects is the education, remediation to get ahead of the damage. And I'm speaking just because I attend the meetings, but I'm not an expert in this. Some of the things that were brought up, of course, at one time was to actually put markings on all the, for the 100-year flood on all the telephone poles, to realize we didn't own the telephone poles and we shouldn't do it, since the people have to climb up the poles don't really like having signage on it, which everybody should know that already, since when somebody staples a sign to it, this means they have to climb over the staples and they don't like it, or the nails. So really the whole thing is to get this passed. If you want, I know it is a lengthy reading. I think I haven't read it cover to cover in a couple of years, but I know we've been working on the projects as they go forward. I don't know when the next meeting is, but I know since we have a new county planner, we want to start that rolling again. If need be, I can bring Paul Logan. He's not available today due to an illness in his family. But again, this is something we're going to start rolling on. We need to. Questions? No?
I'm happy.
My only question, you said natural disasters, so
Yes.
this is fully focused on natural disasters.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Again, we realized what perked up in the past couple of years was the derecho, high winds, tornadoes. And that's what you start looking at. That worked its way up in the past couple of years in terms of another potential hazard. But it really just concentrates on the natural ones. And again, it is an assessment of what I think there's a dollar value for what happened if the city got totally wiped out, but I forget what that number is. I don't anticipate that to happen. But the idea is you look and say, well, what happens if there's a 100-year flood? How do you deal with it? Are there places that you can actually have people shelter in a flood situation? What do you do? How do you get the word out? How do you get all the emergency forces aligned? Everything from that to thinking of where you're going to put a heliport if there is a flood, because it's certainly not going to be Oblenus or Holzer at that point. Things like that, of that nature. And again, I'm not the expert on it. I could give you some of the notes that we've had on it. It's usually, as I say, a roundtable meeting with everything, with universities involved too. Realize they have that sound system of theirs that is very is useful. the others, Nelsonville, of course, has a siren system that they test regularly. So there are mechanisms in place in various parts of the county.
Member Reisner.
Since the city and the county and the Ohio University are talking about joining forces with our emergency response, I think we've appropriated money now for a study. It seems like something to be really useful for if such an entity were to exist.
Well, yes. Again, when you start looking and say, let's combine them all and put all our eggs in one basket, you better be sure that's a good place and a good location, and that would work.
Not on the floodplain.
Yeah, probably not on a floodplain. And again, centrally located. I mean, if you look right now, the EMAs pretty much has stations all over the place. As you probably read in the paper there, they've got areas. The mutual aid agreements, make sure those are up to date and what the procedures are. We regularly have, tabletop disaster scenarios that are played out. So these things are, you've been in on those, I know that much.
This one coming up.
Yeah, and they play out a scenario. And they're not always just natural hazard ones, but that is part of the picture process.
I think we're talking more like the combination of command and control rather than actually combining, say, all the fire engines into one location and all the police cars in one location, all the ambulance all into the same place. We'll still be dispersed, we'll still be scattered out there, but at least the command and control will be centralized.
That is one of the concepts that will be investigated with the grant, I believe.
Right.
Any other questions?
No. Where's this document at? Online?
I think you got it electronically as a PDF, right?
I did.
I probably have a copy of it. I don't know if I have the latest. I think the Service Safety Director sent it out last week. I was under the impression she may have sent it to everybody, but maybe not. We'll get it to you.
Okay.
Okay? No problem with that. And again, it's a draft. It needs to be ratified.
Right.
I do have a couple things under miscellaneous, and in particular, you're going to see on Court Street a banner, Ohio University, starting, I believe it's June 25th, through the end of the month, which is, August 25th through the 30th, which OU's going tobacco-free. So it's a reminder to all that it's going tobacco-free, and also to share with you, as I believe I did last week, and this is an educational moment, is that there are cigarette butt bins recycled for recycling purposes that are currently mounted from Washington Street down to State Street. I believe there's 22 of them. I know that Deputy Service Safety Director has been working hard with the street personnel and getting those hung up. So those are up as well. And also a reminder that our city parks are, and all recreational facilities are also tobacco-free. So there's a lot of tobacco-freeness moving through the city of Athens, and hopefully onwards. And Member Pappy has also another announcement.
Thank you, Steve. So we have been approached by the organizer for the International King Midget event for next year. And we wanted to get ahead of this because we know how dates in the summer kind of get booked up. And again, this is an international event. It happens every 10 years. And it is the second Saturday in August, which is August 13th, 2016. And so as we know it now, this event has happened, like I said, 10 years ago. Some of you may remember it. Usually they drive up High Street. That's one of the big things they do in the midget, in the vehicles. So we know that there will be some closures, probably a couple blocks of High Street, possibly Court Street. So this will go on in discussion, but I wanted to get that date out there.
Okay.
Good. Speaking of that you're exactly right, Michelle. They want to do the High Street Challenge, but they also want to do a 1 gallon challenge where they put a gallon of fuel in a king midget and see how far they can go. And basically the loop that they want to do is Union Street, 682, like Union Street, the Richland Avenue, 682 to Union, and see how far they can get on a tank of
How many
gas.
laps they plan to do?
depends on the car, maybe a half or maybe two. It depends on how fuel efficient they are.
And they also
But that's,
mentioned,
they want to go bigger.
right,
next
and they
year.
also mentioned it may not be Court Street, but maybe there's a place at the university, I don't know, but they would like to allow people to look at the vehicle, you know.
Last time I think it was West Washington. They ran it up High Street. That's their test, quality control test for
Okay.
the cars. And then if they make it up there, they're good to sell, I guess. In the
Okay.
past, that's how it worked.
Okay.
The other place you see a lot of congestion, of course, is we have that sign, home of King Midget off of Stimson. You'll see a lot of them parked there, so that becomes a traffic hazard as well.
Okay. So there's still some planning to go and organization, but we just wanted to get the date out there of August 13th, 2016.
Okay. Give you time to tune up your midget, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. That's all I have.
That's all.
Thank you.
We'll have the Planning and Development Committee next, and the item that I see is a lot split on Columbus Road, and Councilmember Reisman.
I'll handle that this evening. Technically, Vice Chair, I believe we have some people here to speak to the issue. Come to the podium, identify themselves. I'll give you free rein.
You should have a recommendation from Planning Commission already, right? Somewhere in the packet now. Did you get one?
I didn't, no.
Okay. Chris Moore.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rusty Rittenhouse. I'm an attorney at LaBelle & Associates, 449 East State Street, Athens, Ohio. I represent Sean Jones, who's the owner of some property on Columbus Road. The property on Columbus Road consists of two parcels, one of which is approximately 6 acres in size, the other is approximately 16 acres in size. During the last few years, this property has been the subject of litigation with the city dealing with the drainage line that runs across it. The issue in it has been access to that drainage line. The city currently does not have an easement for the access of that drainage line. During the course of that litigation, the city's position has been that it does not need an easement for that drainage line. Recently, Mr. Jones has entered into a contract for the sale of a portion of that property. In order to facilitate that sale, he's asking to reallocate the size of those two parcels. The parcel sizes would change from 6 acres and 16 acres to approximately 3 acres and 20 acres. The 20-acre tract would be sold to the buyer. He would retain the 3-acre tract. To this end, he's filed an application for a lot split. In order for that to be completed, he needs to obtain a variance in dealing with the ratios of the entrance that leads to the frontage on Columbus Road, as well as obtain City Council's approval. As part of the steps of that process, the Athens City Planning Commission heard his application. Their recommendation to the City of Athens was that the city approve the lot split, but there were 3 caveats. One, they requested that a variance be granted for the width and depth ratio. The second was that the estimated floodway boundary be removed from the plat before it is recorded. And the third is an easement is granted to the City of Athens for the drainage line. Mr. Jones is fine with the first 2 points, but the third is where our contention is. We'd ask, it's my understanding that the recommendation of the Planning Commission isn't binding on City Council and that you have discretion as to what to accept. So I'd ask that you accept the first 2 points and not the third. The reason for that is the third point is just going to lead to additional problems with the ongoing litigation, and it also undermines the city's current position. Mr. Linder is the realtor for both the buyer and the seller. I can turn things over to him if you have any questions about the split itself. I understand that you're a represented party, so it's probably not ethical for me to take your questions, with Lisa not being present. So if it's all right, I'll turn things over to Mr. Linder, and he can address the details of the split itself.
Any questions?
Mr. Rittenhouse, before you leave,
Yeah.
could you just repeat the third item for me, please?
The third item, or the third criteria is that Mr. Jones grant the City of Athens an easement for the drainage line.
Thank you.
Good evening. Don Linder. I'm a broker at Larry Conrath Realty, and we're also representing both the buyer and the seller in this transaction. The position that both the buyer and the seller have, as well as myself, this really isn't a lot split, it's a lot reconfiguration. So it's a replat. It's really not a lot split. It's not taking one lot and turning it into two. It's taking two lots and changing the configuration of that. And so really the variance that was requested to allow for this is just that there's a depth of that lot which is significant that probably any width wouldn't comply anyway. And even an existing lot wouldn't comply with the requirements of a lot split. But in essence, again, my contention is really not a lot split, it's a lot reconfiguration. Years ago, that's what we called it here in Athens, was a replat, not a lot split, because you're turning two into two, you're not turning one into two. So, albeit it's semantics, obviously the buyer and the seller are just looking in a good faith effort to try to allow this to occur. And as Rusty said, representing the legal aspects of it, that the easement was really not something that it got brought up kind of contrary to the legal, your legal representation advice. And that was announced in the last meeting that it really shouldn't be discussed as part of the approval process. So I'm here to try to answer any questions if anybody has them.
Just, so this terminology just changed? Is this something where we switched at some point in time?
At some point in time, yeah. I think I've worked with many lot splits and lot reconfigurations and replats, and years ago it actually used to be an administrative function. But here you have a variance that comes into play to a certain degree, so that might have to be heard for that purpose. But I'm not going to state that it's different now than before, what have you, but it's not really a complex situation. It's really just a lot reconfiguration. And there's no intention here other than to allow a residual parcel to be used as it was intended to be, which is a commercial lot on Columbus Road. And the piece that's being sold actually will probably have little to no future use because it's primarily in the floodway and floodplain. Albeit there's methods, I would imagine, to be able to develop that property, but that's certainly not what the effort is here. It's just a simple sale of property.
You have a question, Mr. Mayor?
Just a statement. Essentially, the width to depth ratio is the variance that's required. The splitting, how it's going to be functioned right now, would make it more non-conforming in terms of the width to depth ratio.
Right.
My understanding is correct. So, by definition, you're actually increasing a non-conformity. In terms of a lot split from 2 to 2, that is correct. But again, I think the vote was 3-4 and 2 against at the Planning Commission. I'd have to go back and look at the
Yeah, I have to look at the minutes. I was there, but I don't remember either.
Yeah, I think it was a close vote. It wasn't.
Well, that's why the caveats came in.
Yes.
If I remember the way the session went, there was general consensus about the sending it up here to council, but with 3 conditions. And I remember discussing to someone saying, well, it's in our lap again, so.
Yes, and I may be wrong. I thought the case was actually dismissed, but I haven't checked with the law director. I thought I saw something concerning the case itself. It may be on an appeal process right now, for all I know. But again, I'm not. I haven't been tracking it. It's unfortunately I've been out for about a week, so I haven't been following all the news and all the permutations of what's going on.
One claim was dismissed in the main bench.
Okay, there you go. And what was the one that was dismissed?
Mandamus.
Okay.
Force the city to obtain easement.
And again, I'm not an attorney representing, but my understanding is that the city's position is there's no need for an easement. So the variance is contrary to what the city's legal position is.
Well, the variance still has to do with the lot width to depth ratio. That's the.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry, the condition of having the easement. That's correct. I'm sorry.
Anyone have any more comments? Well, I think the appropriate thing to do here is we're going to have to discuss this. We do need our law director, I think, to weigh in on this a little bit.
Right.
So we're probably not going to be introducing any legislation, certainly not this month. But after we confer with that, with our law director, then we can move on with this. Don't want to make a mistake.
Sure. Obviously it's the best interest, and this has been going on now for a couple months, and no decision has yet been, made, or no progress has really been made.
Right.
Obviously,
But
the buyer and the
as you
seller.
mentioned, we're still in litigation.
Right.
Okay, and anything that we may or may not do here could affect that.
Right, and I guess I could ask Rusty to speak to that again, relative, unless there's really no other comments to be made.
Okay.
Okay, all right, well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing under miscellaneous for planning and development, unless someone has something that I'm unaware of. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
We're still looking at bed and breakfasts on the planning commission level, I believe. So just to let you know, I did not make the last regional planning commission, so I do not know what was on the topics for that. Let's see, I think tentatively we're trying to put a public meeting together for the pool. I don't know if that falls under planning development. I would think it
I think it
might.
would, yeah.
What?
June 30th is the target date.
Target date is June 30th. I do not have a time. Okay, so-
At the
And I
Kennedy
believe
Center?
you've got drafts of the, final drafts of the report from the consultants.
We did.
I believe that was sent out by the Service Safety Director.
Wonderful.
So now you have some reading material as well.
Madam President?
Just something that originally came up in planning and development. We do have the new law effective on trash can and recycling. That those receptacles need to be out of sight of the street address. So code office, I know, is working with Deputy Service Safety Director Ron Lucas on publicizing this on our website, and also I think possibly some text in our utility bill, but just a notice to the public too that that's now effective, and people should be working on some other place if it is in sight on the street address.
And I believe it's in an informative method right now rather than a punitive method. So you'll get the word if there's a problem.
Okay.
But you should
And
be able to.
thanks to the code office for working with us on this. So.
Kim, anything? No? That's it. Planning and development.
We'll move on to Finance and Personnel Committee. Councilmember Reisner, again. If you could help us with the items.
On deck. Okay, we got a couple of items here. Staffing, cemetery maintenance, and appropriations. We have Laura from the auditor's office to speak to these. I'm a little surprised about the cemetery maintenance thing. I thought that was buried.
Buried.
Yeah. It's been resurrected.
Yeah, well,
It's not a bid issue then.
whether that comes back up.
Okay, well, let's hit us again. What did we do wrong last time? That needs to be
Good
fixed.
evening, thank you. Yes, I'm back to speak to the cemetery ordinance that started reading last Monday. And unfortunately, I am requesting, the auditor's office is requesting a couple of changes in the ordinance. The original request from the auditor's office was to create a cemetery department. I know the ORC language calls it a cemetery maintenance fund. And a fund is, in the auditor world, a bigger piece of the pie. We have a water fund, a sewer fund, etc. In reviewing this, we felt that a cemetery department would be more appropriate. So it would have its own department under the general fund, similar to the fire department or the police department. The suggestion is that would be 101.115, which would be the department. We would call it a cemetery department. Our lands and buildings is considered 101.112. So we're just adding the department into the general fund. if we do that, then the staffing allotment that came with the ordinance, the staffing ordinance, would need to be changed as well, so that those staffing, those seasonal maintenance people would be in their own department. And it would be 101.115 cemetery department. So that's what we are requesting for that ordinance. And I'm open to any questions.
Councilmember Pash.
I know there was some conversation kicked around not too long ago talking about the possibility of there being a township levy was another option of a way to fund. Would something like that constitute then it being a fund, or?
That's a good question. It might, because then it would be a different revenue source. Right now, our revenue source will just be money from the general fund. If it was a tax levy, I think it would still be under general fund. That's more technical than I really can answer, but because we have tax going into general fund accounts, I don't know. I would have to defer to Kathy on that. But
Yeah, I was just thinking if there was a cemetery fund that would match the levy if there was a regular stream of funding.
Right. I'm not sure of the answer. I don't know. Yes.
Laura, as far as revenue coming in, there's probably not going to be a lot at first,
Right.
maybe ever, but are we thinking an M-key through utilities billing that would go to a particular revenue line?
In the auditor's office, we've actually discussed that, and we would prefer not to do it through utilities because of the paperwork backup, the documentation for the revenue, for our auditing purposes. When we have our auditors in, they usually like to see documentation backup, and we would prefer that to go through the auditor's office rather than just an M-key in the utility department.
So we have, basically we have an initial amount of money coming towards us, and that's a fixed amount, and then the other ones would be costs for actual burials themselves. There are not a lot of lots to sell there, if my memory is correct, so really it would be mostly general fund coming out. If we wanted to, in the future, put on the ballot, which is what we'd have to do for a cemetery fund, then we might have to migrate it out of the general fund at that point, I think.
Yeah,
That's where it gets sticky right there.
that gets a little sticky, and I don't
So,
exactly know.
yeah, but that could be further down the line at this point. I do notice, what is it, 06615, you did put 2 as-needed part-time seasonal employees in there. And again, we had this discussion at staff meeting earlier, whether we wanted a full-time. I originally was thinking we should get a full-time and see how it shapes up, but 2 part-time or a part-time might do it to start with, especially since we will be taking it up in August at this point. I was trying to work out a little bit of budget, and I figured when it's all said and done, we'd be spending between the capital amounts and services maybe about $70,000, but that's on the high end, assuming 2 part-time employees, which means we'd have to carve that out of the general fund. And again, this is still a work in process, because I really, all I did is try pulling the 112 lands and buildings and try whittling it down. We have some notes from the association of what their costs were. They're averaging about 41, but I know there's some deferred maintenance that will have to be picked up along the way. And again, really when you get down to it, that doesn't represent the whole year in as well, so we'll have to look at that when time comes.
Madam President, you have a question?
It was just, and I think you've answered it, Mayor, it was the question on what you're approaching us about tonight was the staffing ordinance only, where we had 2 part-time positions identified as the 101.112, and we're now changing that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. We need to change the ordinance and the staffing ordinance. Both.
Got it.
Yes.
The cemetery ordinance itself, does that actually refer to a fund line? I don't think it does.
The staffing ordinance, as I have it.
The staffing ordinance does. But I'm
The
thinking
staffing, the ordinance itself, on the second page under section B, talks about a cemetery maintenance fund.
That's the word you want to change, then?
Yes, should be
Okay.
changed to cemetery department, and then throughout the paragraph, there are some other changes to make it consistent.
In terms of the city table of organization, if we create this department, does that in some way mean that there has to be a department head, or does that department then fall under another greater department? How would it be managed, I guess?
I would, that's a good question. The question that we've been kicking around is whether we need, what? Go ahead, you.
My understanding was there was some discussion that Mr. Envelson would be able to supervise any employees
Yeah, parts
that
of
were
lands and buildings.
cemetery. Yeah.
So
It would
that's
fall under the umbrella of plans and buildings.
lands and buildings.
But he would be titular department head of this new department?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, it would just go under the facilities. Lands and buildings is general facilities in many cases. And again, that's where most of the custodians reside in terms of
Right,
work that's
right.
done there. We have seasonal workers for some of the other maintenance activities. So I suspect that would fall under that umbrella at that time.
Okay.
It may, again, it's all new and different,
Yeah.
so we may have to reconfigure it over time. But the original concept I had is that if we went with a full-time employee, there would be one under the 115. And if we needed a part-time, we'd try getting somebody split between lands and buildings, the 112 and 115. We have employees who are funded by several different fund lines. As example right here. He's a mutt by anybody's definition. He's under, 4 different fund lines, I believe, because his activities are so diffused in terms of what he has to do, both water, sewer, as well as, construction and everything else. So we could adapt it over time. I'm not really worried about that.
Okay.
Again, it's new, and we probably have to fold into the West State Street Cemetery, which has really been taken over by, it has almost been a hobby with streets and lands and buildings. I say that because if I need something fixed over there, I talk to George, and he'll get it done one way or the other. In terms of the maintenance of the sidewalk there, and somebody has to salt that sidewalk when it's icy. That's usually streets. So you can see there's a mix of already activities going on there.
Right. Any other questions on this topic?
One more question. Have you instituted the actual 115 yet?
We have put in expense count lines for 101, 115, but we don't have revenue lines yet. We're not sure what those would be, so we have asked if there's information that could be shared. But we have put in those account lines for expenses.
So in terms of revenue side, would you just have one fund line? Because essentially everything we fund, the initial contribution is going to be a one-shot deal. And then the ongoing, burials fees, which I believe come from the funeral parlors, are directly to us, would be under another pool. But that's it. The first initial is just a one there.
Yeah.
So you just may need one fund line. I'm not sure.
That's kind of what we're asking. How many will we need? And what will, if you're going to sell plots, we may need.
Yeah, I'll leave that to the next mayor, because it sounds really complex. The other one is maintenance of the records. That is a concern of mine. I think the term is a sexton, I think it is, somebody who takes care of these things, but I don't know what the duties would be, and if that's obviously not the groundkeeper's job, and that's, it's not an accounting job, so.
Data manager.
Data manager, yes, okay, for a cemetery.
Oh.
Okay, so does that fall under the internal services as an IT management, or is it
Possibly.
just index cards and nothing else,
Index cards can be computerized, if they're not already are.
I believe they have them entered into a computer spreadsheet, but I don't think they have much more than that. Eventually, you would actually,
Yeah, right.
they have good records. The question is, do they have it accessible and not so much accuracy, but convenience of access in terms of GIS location, lot locations, etc. Well, this is all new to us, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Staying with the topic here, any other? Okay. Well, you realize if at our next regular session, we'll have to introduce an amendment to the original first reading, so everything goes back to a first reading.
First reading,
Okay.
yes.
If you want, you could actually include that in the special sessions that you're planning to have, if you really don't want to expedite it as a possibility. I state that as possible. I don't think there's any real need to rush this forward, but.
Clerk?
I think we already adopted the staffing.
Did you? Okay.
We,
So you'll have to amend that, start from
Yeah,
scratch.
yeah, that's correct.
See what happens, I missed a week on this.
The whole place falls apart.
No, it's not falling apart.
Floods,
I'm
fires.
I'm trying to run as hard as I can to catch up.
Madam President?
I guess I do have a question about staffing. We have we're looking at servicing it right now with 2 part-time maintenance people, but do we have any plans for anybody to be, it's something of interest, not necessarily needing an answer tonight, but who will take over those sexton responsibilities, which may be a full-time position?
I don't know if it'd be full-time. I'm trying to recall. At one of the meetings, I think the association that's running it right now said they're running, averaging maybe, I don't know how many burials a month. But
Well,
not
that's
that.
what I was
What?
wondering, yeah, how many burials a
Yeah,
month?
I don't think that many. I think,
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. I thought it was very few, and I thought he was saying maybe 8 to 10 a year, but I think it's more than that. But it wasn't 8 to 10 a month. I could see where we start worrying about once we get that side amount, but I don't think it was that many.
Okay.
I can double check when the
Just
service
a
safety
question, yeah.
director gets back. I guess you could always go over and look at the fresh sod in various places in county. But again, that will be an issue further down the line, yes. I think probably, again, that would either fall under somewhere in the cemetery fund would have to add another person, what that person looks like, whether it's part-time, full-time. You know, tell you the truth, I wouldn't mind getting an archivist or what was it, data
Manager.
You know, just because I know from how the record retentions are that we could do a lot of improvements on some of that stuff. And I could shoot you the budget I put together, but again, it's still, I need to confer with the original notes and double check it. But I've been trying to put the fund lines together. Basically, it's a cut and paste to things and a guesstimate in terms of the pay levels and the amount of hours.
Okay.
So I'll shoot that to you guys later.
I have one other question.
Council Pepe?
Do we know, in terms of a burial, how much we will receive from the funeral home?
There was a number thrown out there, but I do not remember what it was. It's under a couple thousand. It's more than I thought. It was more than 1,000 for the actual excavation and interment. There were 2 fees there. My memory is correct, but it wasn't above 2,000. But I do not remember what that number was. My memory is saying the combination of both was above 1,000, under 2. And again, this is just unfortunately I don't have my notes with me on that. That was part of the conversation. It's not a lot, okay, and that's the issue right there. It's not going to be a moneymaker. That's what you mean.
Well,
Anything else? I think we touched on appropriations, correct? As we were going through all this.
Moving on to appropriations. Okay. Last time I was here, we discussed the cost allocation for the general fund administrative fee for the different funds. We have finalized what kinds of appropriations will be needed. And so we will be introducing an ordinance at our next meeting for that. There are 2 funds that will actually decrease. That's the wastewater treatment plant and the garbage. So those will be decreased. Their appropriation into the general fund for the general fund administrative fee. Street and recreation and basic internal services will all have an increase in appropriations, which will come from the unappropriated balances. The community center will have an increase in appropriation, but there's not enough in the unappropriated balance to cover what they need. So we have arranged with Rich Capitelli to decrease an equipment line and increase then the appropriations to the general fund administrative fee. So you'll be seeing an ordinance for those appropriations next meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
A couple of things. So the conversation, I was aware of some of this, but not, again, I missed 2 meetings, 1 committee, 1 regular session. The adoption of this, of course, is quite sudden, which means, again, we move money around. I have no problem with that. A little bit thrown off that we're doing it at this rate, at this time. We could always wait till next year, but the conversation I had with Laura here is that we were supposed to be doing this much earlier. This is the recommendation from the auditor's office. It requires your approval of it, so there can be modifications if you feel that we're eating into one fund too much, or not, in particular community center. When I look at that in terms of having to short the capital improvement lines, which is what he was thinking. I would not recommend that. I say we should try this. I'm a little bit hesitant. Again, this has been vetted through Finley, and obviously the state auditors like it. I have some questions about the accuracy of the cost of these things. I mean, essentially, if you try and measure payroll and amounts of cost for general fund versus services, it may not reflect everything there. And it depends on how complex you want to get into these things. And I say that because you can get really convoluted and lost in the detail. But if you look at, say, by looking at the payroll per department and pulling it out of that plus a ratio of that of the total budget, it might not reflect hidden costs in terms of a high turnover of employment where the actual cost of that department is excessive because we have a turnover of hirings. We're going through a process of hiring right now. I was kind of surprised. I had a list. I think we've got about 12 or 18 people that have to be hired, 4 of them being police, 2 being fire. So there's a lot of work in, that it's not reflected in that cost by that department. The other side, of course, is there's other aspects in terms of, let's say, the law directors, that some departments probably generate more litigation than others. So I think this is a good start. I would suggest in the future you look at it again and see if it fits everything that needs to be done. I know I hear the same thing about the Internal Service Fund, which we use cars and computers. The explanation there is that the mechanics spend more time on first responders than some of the other equipment. It needs to be formalized. It needs your approval. And I would suggest that you take time to look into it. I think this is a good start. We should give it a shot and see what it looks like and how it shakes out. But I would not want to see it set in stone if it doesn't actually reflect the costs and the needs that we have.
Madam President.
As I understand from our discussion, on the cost allocation part, it's something that's reviewed retroactively for the past year than the rates established. So, I mean, it does build in a review process or a fluctuation that will reflect the payroll in the particular departments. I hear what you're saying is that there may be other circumstances about the departments.
Yeah.
So they look at the past 12 months, they average payroll, and then what's the other? I don't have the papers in front of me.
Total expenses.
Total expenses. And then we'll average those two, and that's done annually. But I hear what you're saying is have us continue to look at that and see is it working. Internal services, as I understand, we've delayed that particular consideration right now. So we haven't moved forward with that. So it's only the cost allocation that we're moving forward with on the ordinance.
On the
correct?
general fund administrative fee. And we do intend to look at the internal services administrative fee as well
Okay.
in the future here.
I just want to comment, I do like the mayor's suggestion that a review of the process at some point in the future, perhaps a biennial review, just where we talk with the auditor, we talk among ourselves and say, well, how's it working out? Is it accurate? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? And if not, well, then we change something, we tweak it somewhere. If it's working fine, we let it go. But that could be something we could put in the ordinance, that it be a biennial or a triennial review.
Well, again, it's not been a acute problem along the way, but if I look at the cost allocation chart that was put together, I think column G talks about total cost of the fund for general administration fee, which is say $699,000 and change. The appropriation ordinance that we put together for the general other admin, which I assume is what's referenced as 485. The actual revised appropriation is now 599 as of today for the other admin. I assume that's the collective amount we're talking about. And again, it's not a big deal. I think the idea is to get a fair apportionment of the
Correct.
efforts done by the general fund administration offices. So I have no problem with it, but I would hope that you review it and make sure it fits with what your concepts of what things are going, things are being done.
The,
Go ahead.
Yes. Speak.
the policy that was presented does ask for an annual review in every October for the cost allocation.
Okay.
So that's be right when the budget's being made, pretty much.
Right.
So you can get a shot at it then.
Any other questions on this issue, topic, concerns? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I have nothing under miscellaneous.
There is another appropriation, I believe. We're having discussion at staff. I wish I had it with me here. Yeah, sorry, okay. Essentially, we got a grant to paint the Mansfield House where the Tourism Bureau is. One of the things that we need to do also is to put 2 coats of fiberized silver-colored tar on the top and do the roof on it. A discussion at the staffing meeting today is that essentially this would be, of course, the Lands and Buildings particular fund. Basically, to do 2 coats of it would be about $700 for labor and $900 for materials. So what we're looking about is about $1,600 for the entire job. We have the money to do that, but it will short the Lands and Buildings Fund for other activities. So I would suggest that we actually put an appropriation to replenish the money. In particular, there's some tree removals that need to be done. There's something else, I can't remember.
Tree removals at the drug court and also at the Visitors Bureau.
Yeah, so we have some other funds. In other words, what I was hearing from the Lands and Buildings Director is that he's going to be short funds. I will double check on that and see what the numbers. You're smiling, I know, because I smile too when I hear that. But at the same time, there are probably shortages that need to be dealt with there. If I look at his, if I look at his professional services right now, which is where it is, he's got 10,000 revised appropriation, and he's got. Actually, he's only got about 1,700 unappropriated in that, so that doesn't leave him a lot of room for tree repair, et cetera, et cetera. In fact,
That won't pay for the roof.
Well, we'll pay for the roof, 1,600, but that's about it. We'll leave him about $160 left. He could probably move some things around, but the unknowns, of course, is that there's pretty much most of it's pretty tight. You know, we don't want to short him for gas or electric, and he's actually that fund also. The street lighting comes out of that too. Let's see. And street lighting's at 60% right now. So we've got some room, but not a lot.
Okay.
And that's why I'd like to.
Councilmember Patterson.
Mayor, is the roof leaking or is this preventative?
Preventative, yeah.
Yeah, and so painting the shell and might as well paint the roof as well.
Yeah, well, if we do it later, we might splash down tar on the new paint job. Otherwise, we get it all done at once.
Good point.
It pays to be a little preventive on something like that, so you don't ruin all the brochures and everything underneath it.
Well, get your numbers together and get it to us.
Will do, okay. Do you know of any other appropriations?
Okay. I was just going to make a comment about the trees at the Visitors Center there.
Oh, please do.
Regarding what Councilman Patterson was saying, that the trees on the east side shield the building and prevent it from drying. So that's an issue. We have some mold issues and things like that we need
to
fix up with that.
I think the conversation is to trim them, not to eliminate them.
Yes.
Because I think the tree commission would want to know about that.
Yeah, they're healthy trees. So,
You get a green shade of paint? No one would see it.
Just add lead back to the paint, that'll prevent the mold.
Good point.
I have nothing else as far as I know.
Neither do I.
All right, then we'll consider our committee meeting portion of the tonight session adjourned. And what we will now do is establish our quorum for the special session. And we have all but 2 council members here. Council members Fall and Cochran are absent tonight. And we will have an ordinance, a first reading. Now, 7015. It's an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for municipal recycling and refuse and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Madam President. As was discussed about an hour ago, this is an ordinance that will allow or authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into an agreement for a 3-year term, which would be from July 1st of 2015 through June 30th of 2018. It would also allow for expenditure up to $1,095,500. That's going to come from the garbage fund, which is 760, 636, TC 300. And finally, as you know, with the contract and the current contract ending at the end of this month, it does constitute preservation of health, welfare, and safety. So therefore, it will be under an emergency measure to have this go through.
And as part of that discussion, then we do need to see what might be possible for readings, special session for the second, and we will need 2 more special sessions this week. We're not at this point, or it could be even next week, but we're not planning to meet on the 5th Monday, the 29th at this point. So what I would ask is that everybody, yes.
I would ask that we do have a special session. Preferably you could do it at pick a time that everybody can get there. It just has to be for this one reading, each reading. I don't know if you want to have another meeting next Monday, but I doubt it. I don't know if the bodies are here to do it. That's the other question too. I don't know your schedules in general. We could have one in the past when we've tried doing something like this. I had to do something like that. We just make it publicly known, pick a time like 12 o'clock noon, everybody gets together, we do one reading and adjourn. I've sat through those too. It's very simple, but you have to show up. It's life.
Debbie, is the easiest way for everybody to get to speak to you tonight, or
Probably.
so that you have adequate time? You've also,
Yes,
we
we
need to
need
be able to
24
give
hours.
24 hours notice. So we're
I can
not-
meet
we're
anytime
not
this week.
Talking about tomorrow.
My schedule's
and,
open.
Who is most constrained by this point?
Probably
If we did a
me.
noon meeting here at...
Probably me.
Okay, Wednesday, Thursday?
Wednesday, Thursday are out during the day.
Okay. What's Friday look like? I know we're talking about a SOPEC meeting at 1 on Friday. But after that,
Maybe later in the afternoon. I have to look at my schedule. I didn't bring it.
okay. Well, Friday gives us a couple days to actually put the public notice out.
We need 4 people. We need 2 special sessions because we don't have
Oh.
6 to suspend the rules. So we need 4 people here for second reading and 5 people
Here
for
for the third reading.
the final reading.
Okay, so
What,
who can make it Wednesday at noon?
I can do that.
I can do that.
I could not be here. No, you don't need me here.
I can do that.
Okay, noon on Wednesday.
Or if another time's better, I'm here all day. I mean,
And then what about Friday?
Friday,
I can do it.
What time?
I'll have to get back to you.
Okay.
I'll get back to you, like right away. I just need to go home and look.
Member Pappy, would 5 o'clock in the evening be helpful?
On a Friday?
Or any day of the week?
Wednesday and Thursday, no. If that doesn't help.
okay, so we're still aiming at Friday. We have a noon at Wednesday. And then...
And you'll know by tomorrow morning.
Is there anyone who can't meet on Friday at any time?
I think I'm okay.
I'm fine.
You still retired?
I am.
You're going to take a motorcycle trip anytime soon?
I was planning on it, but I watched that weather.
Okay.
I can make mine wide open that day.
Okay, so I can notify everyone after I hear from Michelle
Okay.
of the Friday time.
Okay, thank you.
So our other 2 members definitely will be out all this week?
Yes.
There's no possibility that they'll return early?
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for being available. And again, we're still working on the contract, the nuts and bolts of the contract. I realize the new element, of course, will be the cigarette butt recycling containers. That's another pickup activity we'll have to throw in the bid there somewhere.
Well, since we're discussing the special session, should we also consider the staffing and appropriations that
Your
we'll
call.
discuss.
What do you want to have on the agenda?
It's up to the members. It just means more time.
Well, can she put it together?
That's right.
I can do it if it's necessary.
Oh, hint, hint,
It sounds like it's necessary.
hint. I'm sorry.
It sounds like it's necessary, right? Since you already passed it, you have to amend it, right?
Well, yeah,
We have to-
but being
Hopefully
council, we
anybody
can
going
do
to be
it
hired.
whenever we,
Well, again, we want to get this, we're going to take ownership in August 1st. So here we are at the end of.
You have
2020.
employees, right?
What?
You have to hire people?
I had a conversation with the Human Resource Director. As part-time seasonal, we don't really have to go through all the civil service juggling, as far as I understand. And actually, there's an interest, I believe, of some of the present employees to be interested, which is actually why I am more amicable about part-time, because usually when you have a part-time position, and see they move on to a full-time position. But if
Right.
somebody's doing part-time all this time and doesn't mind, then there's a good chance they'll stick it out. That's not really a big criteria, but the fact is that, I think we have to shake it out and figure out what's going to cost over time. I know we've just went back into committee, sorry.
Councilman Patterson, what's your view on, for finance and personnel? Should we go forward on these two items?
Tonight?
Not tonight, no.
Special session.
Special
session. It's not on the
I
agenda
don't see why
tonight.
not.
Okay, then we'll do it.
Yeah, it's just a word change or two.
Right. Okay, then we'll do it.
Okay, so as a result of the reading of this ordinance and the time restrictions, we'll be having the two special sessions that we've talked about, likely to happen this week. No meeting on the 5th Monday. Next regular session of council on Monday, the 6th of July. Okay. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn this
I
meeting
so
tonight.
move.
A second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.